In the early hours of a cold November morning, for promising lives were taken, quietly, brutally, without warning. No signs of forced entry, no clear motive, and to this day, no explanation from the one man accused. This is not just a story of loss. It's a case that shattered a community, challenged investigators, and left families searching for answers that may never come. If you're committed to truth, driven by justice, and ready to explore the depths of the human psyche, you're in the right place. Subscribe now to follow the stories that still echo in silence. Because in true crime, the answers are never easy and the silence often speaks loudest. It was just after 4 a.m. on November 13th, 2022, when the small college town of Moscow, Idaho, lost its innocence. The 3-story rental home at 1122 King Road, nestled just off campus, was supposed to be a haven. Inside lived 5 University of Idaho students, 4 young women, and one of their visiting boyfriends. The night had been like many others in this sleepy town. Kaylee Goncalves and her best friend Madison Mogen had gone out to a bar downtown. Xana Kernodle and Chapin, who was sleeping over that night, had attended a campus party. But by morning, the sun would rise on a nightmare. At 11:58 a.m., a frantic 911 call shattered the quiet. The police arrived at a scene they would later describe as one of the most brutal they'd ever witnessed. 4 students were found stabbed to death in their beds. Their names: Kaylee Goncalves, Madison Mogen, Xana Kernodle, and Chapin, would soon become national headlines. There were no signs of forced entry, no murder weapon, no suspect. But one thing was certain: the killer had been inside that house and left before anyone knew what had happened. Yet amid the horror, a strange detail emerged. 2 surviving roommates were found unharmed, and one of them had seen something. As investigators poured into the house on King Road, they began retracing the timeline, backtracking hours, even minutes, before the brutal murders. The 2 surviving roommates, Bethany Funk and Dylan Mortensen, were in the house during the killings. For days, the public questioned how they could have remained unharmed and unaware for nearly 8 hours before 911 was called. But then came the detail that stopped the nation cold. Dylan, one of the survivors, told investigators she had seen someone inside the house that night. According to probable cause affidavit, Dylan awoke around 4 a.m. to the sound of someone crying. She opened her bedroom door multiple times. The 3rd time, she saw a tall figure in black clothing and a mask cover his mouth and nose. He had bushy eyebrows. He walked right past her, and she froze. The figure moved toward the back sliding door and vanished into the night. Dylan locked herself in her room. She didn't call the police. Not then. Not for hours. It wasn't until just before noon that the first emergency call came in, after another roommate found a body upstairs and ran for help. To this day, Dylan's silence in those critical early hours has stirred endless speculation, sympathy, and suspicion online. But for detectives, it wasn't her delay that stood out. It was her description. A masked man, dressed in black, bushy eyebrows. And just like that, the case had its first clue. With no murder weapon, no forced entry, and no clear motive, Moscow police faced mounting pressure and a wave of national criticism. But then came the security footage. Just days after the murders, detectives requested surveillance from the neighborhood. At 3:29 a.m., a white Hyundai Elantra was caught on camera, circling the King Road area. Once, then again, and again. Between 3:29 and 4:20 a.m., the car passed the victim's home at least 4 times before speeding away around 4:20 a.m., just minutes after the time police believed the murders occurred. Police didn't know who the driver was, but they knew what they had: a pattern, a predator circling. They quietly issued a nationwide alert for a white 2011 to 2013 Hyundai Elantra, and behind the scenes, they began combing through license plates, vehicle registrations, and surveillance logs from nearby universities. Meanwhile, forensics teams inside 1122 King Road uncovered a chilling piece of physical evidence, a K-bar knife sheath, left behind in the bedroom where Madison and Kaylee were killed. The sheath, military style, bore a U.S. Marine Corps insignia and, more importantly, a single trace of DNA. But it wasn't in any criminal database. Weeks passed, and then, on December 27th, investigators found a partial match. In the trash, pulled from the home of family in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania, the match belonged to the father of a man named Bryan Kohberger, a 28-year-old PhD student in criminology, attending Washington State University, just 8 miles from the University of Idaho campus. He drove a white Hyundai Elantra. He had bushy eyebrows, and he was studying patterns of violent behavior in criminal minds. He wasn't just interested in killers. He had allegedly become one. It was just after 1:30 a.m. on December 30th, 2022, when tactical FBI agents moved in. The neighborhood in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania, still draped in winter stillness, was jolted awake as the front door of the Kohberger family home was breached. Bryan Kohberger was taken into custody without incident. He wore latex gloves. He had been separating his garbage from the family's, careful not to let his DNA touch anything. Still, it wasn't enough. Inside his white Hyundai Elantra, police found a cache of evidence: strand of hair, fibers, and a stained mattress cover. Surveillance had captured him cleaning his car for hours, wiping every surface, vacuuming obsessively. A search of his phone history revealed something more unsettling. Bryan had returned to the crime scene just hours after the killings. He had driven by the house at least 12 separate times in the months prior. He wasn't just stalking the area. He was watching them. But what chilled officers most was his reaction when one agent told him, "You've been arrested for the murders of 4 University of Idaho students." Kohberger didn't ask why. He didn't deny it. He simply said, "Am I the only one who's been arrested?" The cryptic question, never explained, would haunt investigators and the public alike. What did he mean? Was someone else involved? Or was it simply the words of a man trying to maintain control in the face of collapse? By January 3rd, 2023, he was extradited back to Idaho in a bulletproof vest, escorted by armed guards. The man studying serial killers had become the center of a national true crime obsession. By the time Bryan Kohberger stepped into the Latta County Courthouse, the world was already watching. Cameras weren't allowed inside, but the media lined the steps, helicopters circled above, and a nation hungry for answers leaned in. Families of the victims sat side by side, holding hands and holding back tears. They had waited months for this moment. They wanted to hear the one word that could change everything. Why? But that word never came. At his arraignment in May 2023, Kohberger stood still, expressionless, as the judge read out 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of burglary. He answered each with a flat, "Yes, Your Honor." But when asked to enter a plea, he chose silence. The judge entered not guilty on his behalf. Prosecutors announced they would seek the death penalty, calling the murders especially heinous, atrocious, and cruel. Kohberger's defense team hinted at mental health struggles. The public hoped that in trial, more would be revealed, but that trial would never come. On July 2nd, 2025, in a move that shocked some and outraged others, Bryan Kohberger changed his plea to guilty. In exchange, the death penalty was taken off the table. He was sentenced to 4 consecutive life sentences without parole, plus 10 years for burglary. Still, he offered no apology, no explanation, no motive. For the families, the sentence was final, but the closure wasn't. Kaylee Goncalves' family called the plea deal a deal with the devil. They had wanted their day in court. They wanted Kohberger to be forced to explain what happened between 3:45 and 4:20 a.m. inside that home. But all they got was silence. The house at 1122 King Road stands empty now. Its windows are boarded. The door is sealed. The University of Idaho has announced plans to demolish it, a symbolic act meant to help the community heal. But for the families of the victims, there is no bulldozing what's been left behind. Each parent carries their child's memory differently. Kaylee Goncalves, Kaylee's mother, has become a public voice, never missing a hearing, never softening her demand for answers. Steve Goncalves, Kaylee's father, still says what many others won't. This wasn't justice. This was survival. Ethan Chapin's family started a foundation in his name. His triplet siblings returned to the university, trying to rebuild life on the same campus that took their brother from them. Xana Kernodle's father breaks down when he talks about her. He once said she was supposed to come home for Thanksgiving. Instead, I got a phone call I'll never forget. Madison Mogen's stepfather called her the glue that held her friends together. When he spoke in court during sentencing, his voice cracked. We needed to hear why, and we never did. Meanwhile, theories continue to swirl. Some believe Kohberger was testing a fantasy. Others think Kaylee may have unknowingly crossed his path, at a coffee shop, a store, somewhere mundane. Some online sleuths even suggest he was stalking the house, not the people. But the truth is, we don't know. The case is closed in court, but open in hearts. The weapon was never found. The motive never spoken. The silence never broken. And that silence may be the loudest legacy of all. In the end, the story of the Idaho isn't just about a killer or a trial. It's about 4 young lives stolen in the night for reasons still unknown. It's about the haunting power of unanswered questions. And it's about a house, once full of laughter and friendship, now known for a darkness no light can reach. And maybe that's why this case still haunts us, because it reminds us that the scariest monsters aren't the ones we see. They're the ones who watch us silently and never tell us why.